Imagine, if you will, just settling in for a story. It starts out as this deeply claustrophobic psychological thriller.
Right. Very heavy.
Yeah, we're talking high-stakes paranoia. A ruler who's just totally losing his grip on reality.
Unraveling completely.
Exactly. And his family is being torn apart from the inside out in this incredibly dark, oppressive court setting. So you are on the edge of your seat, your stomach is in knots, the tension is just suffocating. And then suddenly, like right at the halfway point, the director just yells, "Cut!"
Yeah, the whole world shifts.
The scenery completely changes. The lighting shifts from these cold grays to brilliant sunshine. And without any warning, you find yourself right in the middle of a vibrant, rustic, romantic comedy.
It's so drawing.
It really is. There's singing, there's dancing, there's a literal sheep shearing festival.
Oh, and the pickpocket.
Right. A pickpocket running around in a fake beard selling ribbons.
Yeah.
This is just the absolute dictionary definition of tonal whiplash.
It's the kind of narrative pivot that, quite frankly, it shouldn't work.
No, not at all.
If you pitched that structure to, a modern Hollywood studio today, they would literally laugh you out of the room.
They'd throw the script out.
Absolutely. It defies almost every conventional rule of cohesive storytelling. You don't just staple a tragedy to a comedy and expect the audience to, just go along for the ride.
But it does work.
It does.
And it was engineered by none other than William Shakespeare, right, in his late play, The Winter's Tale.
Yes.
And figuring out exactly how Shakespeare pulls off stitching a psychological thriller to a romantic comedy without the whole thing just falling apart. That is our mission today on this deep dive.
It's a massive undertaking.
Oh, totally. We are going to examine how he masterfully and almost miraculously really blends two completely opposing genres into a single cohesive tragicomedy.
Right.
We'll be tracking the internal and external shifts from destructive doubt in a wintry court to pastoral grace in a sun-drenched countryside. And we'll explore what that tells us about the human capacity for forgiveness. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to even understand what Shakespeare is doing here, we have to grasp just how many theatrical rules he's deliberately breaking right out of the gate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To understand the sheer audacity of The Winter's Tale, we really need to talk about the classical Aristotelian unities.
Right, the unities.
Yeah, so in the Renaissance, theater critics and scholars were just obsessed with these rules, which derive from Aristotle's Poetics.
Okay.
And the unities demanded three specific things for a play to be considered, good or structurally sound.
Right.
Unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action.
So what does that mean in practice?
Well, unity of time basically meant the entire plot of the play should take place within 24 hours.
Wow, okay. Short timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And unity of place meant it should all happen in a single physical location, or at least locations you could reasonably travel between within that single day.
Makes sense.
And then unity of action meant one primary plot line. No jarring subplots, and definitely no genre mixing. A tragedy stays a tragedy, right?
And a comedy stays a comedy.
Exactly. It's very rigid.
It's a very neat, tidy way to tell a story. It keeps the audience from getting confused.
Right. And The Winter's Tale just takes a sledgehammer to every single one of those unities.
It just shattered them.
Totally. It gives us a king whose unfounded jealousy destroys his family in the wintry, rigid political court of Sicilia.
Right.
And then, right in the middle, it executes this breathtaking jump 16 years into the future.
16 years?
Yeah. Transporting us across the sea to the pastoral, chaotic land of Bohemia. So it completely shatters time, it completely shatters place, and it radically fractures the action by shifting from pure tragedy to high comedy.
It's just wild.
It's a structure designed to drag us through the bitterest of winters just so we can fully appreciate the arrival of spring.
It really is like two plays stitched together.
Oh, absolutely.
And to understand the springtime, we absolutely have to start in the winter.
We do.
So let's look at Acts I through 3rd, which take place in the wintry court of Sicilia. This is a world of elite, highly charged political dynamics. And we're immediately introduced to King Leontes of Sicilia and his childhood best friend, Polixenes.
Who is the king of Bohemia.
Exactly. Now, Polixenes has been visiting Leontes for, 9 months?
9 months, yeah.
And he's finally getting ready to head home.
And this friendship is the absolute bedrock of the tragedy that's about to unfold. We really have to look closely at how this childhood bond is described in the text.
Right, the twin lambs.
Yes. Polixenes describes the two of them as having been twin lambs that did frisk in the sun.
Such a great line.
It is. He says, what we changed was innocence for innocence. We knew not the doctrine of ill doing.
Wow.
And this specific imagery is vital for understanding what happens next, because the twin lambs represent this Edenic, perfectly pure past.
Like completely uncorrupted.
Exactly. It's an idealized, almost holy state of boyhood before the complications of adulthood even set in.
Before they grew up, before they became kings, and crucially before women entered the picture.
Precisely. It's a state of being before sexual awakening, before the heavy, world-altering responsibilities of the crown.
Right.
And, in a theological sense, before the burden of original sin.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Scholars of the Jacobean era note that ideals of male friendship were often based on similarity, being identical, like twinned lambs, reflecting each other perfectly.
You're my best friend because you're exactly like me.
Right. But ideals of sexual love, of marriage, are constructed around difference.
Oh, I see.
The coming together of two fundamentally different beings to create a lineage.
Right. The idea of two different pieces fitting together to make a whole, which inherently requires compromise and vulnerability.
Exactly.
But Leontes seems to have a lot of trouble with that transition from identical friendship to adult marriage.
He really does.
Because when Polixenes decides he really has to leave, Leontes can't convince him to stay. So Leontes turns to his wife, Queen Hermione, who is visibly heavily pregnant.
Very pregnant, yes.
And he asks her to convince Polixenes. And she succeeds. She gives this lovely, gracious speech, and Polixenes agrees to stay longer.
Right.
But the moment she succeeds, the moment she offers Polixenes her hand in friendship, Leontes just absolutely snaps.
He loses it.
He becomes convinced instantaneously that his wife and his best friend are having an affair, and that the child she's carrying belongs to Polixenes.
Yeah.
Now, when I was reading through the material for this deep dive, this was a major friction point for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, unlike Othello, who has Iago literally dripping poison in his ear for an entire play, constantly manipulating him with fake evidence.
Right. Iago is actively destroying him.
Right. But Leontes has no one. There is no villain whispering in the shadows. He just goes completely paranoid out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, how do we explain a complete psychotic break with zero external trigger? Doesn't that make him like a poorly written character compared to Othello?
You know, it's a completely valid frustration. And for centuries, critics wrestled with this exact problem.
I can imagine.
Some earlier editors literally threw their hands up and said, Leontes' madness has no discernible cause, that it's just a clumsy plot device to get the story moving.
Like Shakespeare just got lazy.
Exactly. But modern psychoanalytic readings provide a much deeper, far more terrifying explanation.
Okay, lay it on me.
So, when we look at this through Freudian and Lacanian lenses, what looks like a lack of external motivation is actually just a lack of rationalization.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It means Leontes doesn't need an Iago, because Leontes becomes his own manipulator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he concocts the entire nightmare within his own mind, projecting his own deep-seated internal terrors onto his wife and his friend.
Okay, so he's basically gaslighting himself.
He absolutely is.
But what is the underlying terror? Like, what is he projecting?
Well, it goes directly back to that twin lambs metaphor we just talked about.
Okay.
Lacanian theory talks a lot about how the human ego is formed, right? Specifically, how fragile it is when it realizes it's separate from the rest of the world.
Oh, like realizing you're an individual.
Yeah. Exactly. Separate from the mother, separate from the ideal reflection. And Leontes has this profound, unconscious inability to accept the inexorable progression of time and the loss of his boyhood innocence.
He wants to stay a kid.
He wants to remain a twinned lamb forever. But standing right in front of him is Hermione's heavily pregnant body.
Which is undeniable proof that he's an adult.
Exactly. Her body acts as the literal, undeniable symbol of adult life, of sexual maturity, of what scholars call the post-lapsarian world.
The world after the fall from the Garden of Eden.
Right. So for Leontes, Hermione becomes the physical agent of his fall from grace. His sudden jealousy is fueled by this warped misogyny and a deep-seated fear of female fidelity.
It's about control, isn't it?
Entirely.
I mean, in the highly patriarchal society of the Jacobean era, which Shakespeare is very much reflecting here, men held all the political and social power.
Yes, they did.
A king's entire identity, his legacy, his divine right to rule is completely tied up in his bloodline.
Exactly. Men held all the power, yet they were entirely dependent on women to secure that power through childbirth.
That's such a fragile dynamic.
It really is.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
king can command armies, he can dictate the law, he can execute his enemies, but the one thing he cannot absolutely empirically verify or control is a woman's fidelity.
He just has to trust her.
Right. And psychoanalytic analysts refer to this specific male anxiety as a fear of maternal malevolence.
Maternal malevolence, wow.
Yeah, it's a terror that, despite all his crowns and titles, his absolute control over his world is just a devastating illusion, because a single secret act by his wife could completely invalidate his entire bloodline.
That is terrifying for someone obsessed with control.
Exactly. So when Leontes looks at Hermione and Polixenes holding hands, his fragile ego just shatters to protect itself.
Right.
It's actually easier for him to invent a conspiracy where he's the victim than to accept the vulnerable reality of adult love and the unstoppable passage of time.
You know, we see that kind of paranoia today, right?
Oh, definitely.
I mean, we've all done a mild version of this. Convincing ourselves a friend is mad at us based on a totally normal text message.
Reading way too much into things.
Right, building a whole elaborate narrative out of literally nothing just to protect our own insecurities. But Leontes does it on a kingdom-destroying scale.
He burns everything down.
He does, and what's amazing is how Shakespeare writes this psychological collapse, because it completely fractures Leontes' language.
It's brilliant.
There's this incredible speech in the text, often called the Litany of Nothings, where Leontes is just spiraling.
Yes.
He's watching Hermione and Polixenes interact, and he mutters, is whispering nothing, is leaning cheek to cheek, is meeting noses, kissing with inside lips.
He's agonizing over it.
And then he goes, why, then the world and all that's in is nothing. The covering sky is nothing. Bohemia nothing. My wife is nothing. Nor nothing have these nothings, if this be nothing.
It's just a terrifying descent into madness, perfectly captured in the syntax.
The structural breakdown of that speech is brilliant. If you look at the text, it is completely frantic.
Chopped up.
Yes, chopped up with question marks, semicolons, and heavy enjambment.
Which, for those who might not know, is when a thought or a sentence spills over the end of the poetic line without a pause.
Right, which creates this rushed, breathless rhythm.
Exactly.
The sentences are only 4 or 5 words long. He's panting. It is not the grand, composed, measured blank verse of a confident king.
Not at all.
It is the raw, unfiltered audio of a mind plunging straight into nihilism. And he takes the concept of nothing, which, fun fact, in Jacobean slang, was also a crude double entendre for female anatomy.
Oh, yeah. Shakespeare loved those.
Right, and he repeats it until it consumes his entire reality. He's literally worshiping the void.
It's a total perversion of the imagination.
Totally.
Leontes is using the creative power of his mind not to build something beautiful, but to construct a hallucination that destroys his world.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare amplifies the tragedy of this by contrasting Leontes' frantic, convoluted doubt with the steadfast grace of Queen Hermione.
They are such polar opposites.
They really are absolute opposites in this first half. Because while Leontes' language is twisted, venomous, and completely untethered from reality, Hermione remains this pillar of absolute dignity.
She's incredible.
Even when Leontes publicly humiliates her in front of the entire court, tears her young son away from her, accuses her of treason and adultery, and throws her into prison while she's pregnant.
It's so brutal.
It's awful. But she doesn't resort to hysterics. She doesn't scream and curse him. She maintains this stoic, almost terrifying composure.
Yeah.
She tells him, I must be patient till the heavens look in the comfort. She recognizes that earthly logic has failed, that her husband's mind is sick.
So she goes over his head.
Exactly. She appeals to a higher power, specifically the divine oracle of Apollo.
And the oracle's response is the ultimate contrast to Leontes.
Oh, completely.
I mean, Leontes is all excessive flourishes, confusing logic, and manic repetition. But when the sealed message from the oracle of Apollo is opened in the courtroom, it speaks in stark, plain, incredibly transparent language.
It leaves no room for interpretation.
None. It is utterly unambiguous. It reads, Hermione is chaste, Polixenes blameless, Camillo a true subject, Leontes a jealous tyrant, his innocent babe truly begotten, and the king shall live without an heir if that which is lost be not found. It is the clearest text message in the history of literature.
It really is.
The gods themselves have spoken and said, you are wrong.
And this is the moment where Leontes commits the ultimate act of hubris. It's the fatal flaw that seals the tragedy of the first half.
Right.
Confronted with undeniable divine truth, he just denies it. He says, there is no truth at all in the oracle. The session shall proceed. This is mere falsehood.
Unbelievable.
He places his own paranoid delusion above the literal voice of the gods.
And the universe instantly, violently strikes back.
Instant karma.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Within seconds of him denying the oracle, a servant rushes in with news that his young son, Prince Mamilius, has died of a sudden, mysterious illness.
Basically, a broken heart.
Right. He was terrified by his mother's public shaming. And upon hearing that her son is dead, Hermione collapses.
Yeah.
She is carried out, and shortly after, her loyal friend and defender, the noblewoman Paulina, returns to announce that the queen is dead.
Just devastating.
Leontes' tyrannical refusal to accept grace, his insistence on projecting his own internal winter onto his family, it's resulted in their total annihilation. The tragic trajectory of Cecilia has hit absolute rock bottom.
It is suffocating.
He has literally created a winter of his own making, fueled entirely by his own sick mind, and somehow it gets worse.
Oh, much worse.
Before the trial, in his absolute madness, he ordered Paulina's husband, a loyal lord named Antigonus, to take Hermione's newborn baby girl, who Leontes still believes is Polixenes' bastard,
Right.
and abandon her in some remote, wild place outside of his kingdom. He demands she be left to the mercy of the elements.
So cruel.
So let's take stock of where we are. We have a dead son, we have a dead wife, a banished best friend, and an innocent infant abandoned in the wilderness.
It's bleak.
If the play stays in this court, in this tone, it's
Sure.
just going to be a pure, unremitting, pitch-black tragedy.
There's nowhere else for it to go.
Exactly. The narrative must physically and tonally escape this suffocating environment, and that necessity brings us to the pivot.
The famous pivot.
The hinge upon which this entire play swings. The transition between the tragedy of Cecilia and the comedy of Bohemia.
Right.
And Shakespeare executes this transition using two of the most incredibly bizarre, rule-breaking theatrical devices in the history of literature.
It is a phenomenal, audacious shift. I mean, we completely leave the claustrophobic stone walls of the court and move to the rugged coastline of Bohemia.
Which, wait, isn't Bohemia landlocked?
It is. As many geographers love to point out, a coastline in Bohemia is a physical impossibility.
Okay, so Shakespeare just messed up.
Well, no. This geographical error isn't just Shakespeare being sloppy with a map. It's a deliberate signal to the audience.
Oh, like a cue.
Exactly. It tells us that we are leaving the strict empirical reality of the tragic court and entering the realm of romance, of fantasy, of myth.
The rules are gone.
Right, the strict rules of reality no longer apply here. So Antigonus arrives on this mythical, stormy shore with the baby.
Okay.
And in a brief moment of tragic solemnity, he names her Perdita, which means the lost one.
Based on a vision he had of Hermione, right?
Yes. And he lays her on the cold ground with some gold and some identification papers wrapped in a mantle. And then he hears a noise.
Oh, boy.
And we get arguably the most famous and most bizarre stage direction in all of theater history.
Exit, pursued by a bear.
Exactly. A literal bear chases Antigonus off the stage and, as we soon learn, brutally devours him.
It's so crazy.
It is. Now, we have to unpack why Shakespeare uses a bear here. On a practical level, the Globe Theatre was located right next to the bear baiting pits in London.
Wait, really? So he might have just used a real bear?
It's entirely possible. He might have literally borrowed a tame bear from next door for a cheap thrill. Or he just had an actor in a very convincing suit.
That's hilarious.
But structurally, it serves a profound purpose. Because in a standard tragedy, the death of a noble, loyal character like Antigonus would be treated with immense gravity.
Right. There would be a mournful monologue, a profound sense of loss.
Maybe a speech about the cruel whims of fate.
Yeah.
But Shakespeare deliberately, almost aggressively, disrupts the tragic tone here. We don't see the gruesome death. We hear about it a few moments later through the perspective of a rustic shepherd's son.
The clown.
Known in the text simply as the clown, yes.
And the clown's description is such a jarring moment. He comes on stage, completely out of breath, and he describes this horrifying event, a nobleman being torn apart by a wild beast and a ship full of sailors sinking in a massive storm with this bumbling, chaotic, matter-of-fact energy.
He's so detached from it.
He's practically tripping over his words, trying to decide which disaster is more exciting to talk about. He literally says, "I'll go see if the bear be gone from the gentleman, and how much he hath eaten. They are never cursed but when they are hungry."
It's just so absurd.
It's astonishing. It's like the director suddenly swapped out a heavy, dramatic orchestral score for circus music right in the middle of a death scene. As an audience member, you don't know whether to gasp or laugh.
And that confusion is exactly the point.
Right.
By having the clown describe the bear attack so impersonally, so conically, The audience's emotional investment in the tragedy is deliberately severed.
Shakespeare's basically telling us, stop crying.
The time for mourning is over. We are not allowed to mourn Antigonus. We are forced to laugh, or at least be thoroughly bewildered.
It acts as an emotional release valve.
Exactly. The tragedy had become too heavy, too toxic, and the bear literally eats the last remnant of Cecilia's tragic reality. It clears the stage for something entirely new.
But the bear is only the first half of the pivot. The audience is still reeling from that. And then Shakespeare deploys his second massive hinge mechanism.
Time.
The literal personification of time. Time physically walks onto the stage as a character, usually depicted as an old man with an hourglass and wings.
Right, acting as a chorus.
Yeah. And he directly addresses the audience and casually announces that we are fast-forwarding 16 years. Just like that. We are wiping out over a decade and a half.
Which is the ultimate destruction of the Aristotelian unity of time we discussed earlier.
Take a sledgehammer to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Time says, impute it not a crime to me or my swift passage that I slide over 16 years.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is how the role of time shifts dramatically between the two halves of the play.
How so?
Remember, in the first half, Leontes fought against time. He tried desperately to cling to his boyhood innocence, viewing the passage of time, the aging of bodies, and the reality of childbirth as a corruption. His tragedy was a refusal to move forward. But now, time takes absolute control. Time acts as the ultimate bridge. It is no longer a destroyer, it is a revealer of truth, ushering us out of the devastation and providing the necessary space for healing to occur.
And the old shepherd who stumbles upon the abandoned baby Perdita right after the bear attack perfectly summarizes this entire mechanical and thematic pivot.
He really does.
He looks at his son, who has just seen Antigonus die, and then he looks at this beautiful crying infant wrapped in gold in his arms, and he says, "Thou mettest with things dying, I with things newborn."
It's beautiful.
That line just gives me absolute chills every time I read it. It is the exact fulcrum of the play. The older generation's tragedy, their self-inflicted winter of death and paranoia, is explicitly, undeniably giving way to the new generation's comedy and the promise of spring.
It is a profound structural cleansing. With the slate wiped clean by that 16-year fast-forward, the narrative completely leaves behind the rigid, destructive, politically elite laws of men in Sicilia.
And we enter Bohemia.
Yes, the untamed natural world of Bohemia, where a very different kind of social order is taking shape. We are moving from courtly paranoia to pastoral redemption.
So we land in Act 4, and the contrast is visually and emotionally staggering. We aren't in a dark, enclosed, whispered-about palace anymore.
Not at all.
We are in the middle of a vibrant, open-air, working-class sheep-shearing festival.
Lots of energy.
Yeah, the focus has completely shifted away from paranoid monarchs plotting treason to common shepherds feasting, dancing, and falling in love.
Specifically, we're focused on the blossoming romance between the lost princess Perdita,
who's been raised for the last 16 years believing she is a humble shepherd's daughter.
Exactly. And Bohemia's Prince Florizel, who happens to be the son of King Polixenes.
Of course he is.
And right away, we see a totally different philosophical debate happening here.
We do, and the sources emphasize how deeply this Bohemian section relies on the dichotomy of nature versus artifice. Bohemia operates on a completely different set of rules than Sicilia. In Sicilia, tragedy was driven by an adherence to strict tyrannical law and artificial paranoia.
Yes.
Here in Bohemia, comedy thrives on chaotic disobedience and the deep, natural cycles of the earth.
We see this explicitly in a famous debate between Perdita and King Polixenes.
Oh, the flower debate.
Yes. So Polixenes has disguised himself and crashed the party to spy on his son, and he and Perdita get into this surprisingly deep botanical debate about streaked gillivores.
Which are a type of crossbred flower, right?
Exactly. Perdita refuses to plant them in her garden because she considers them artificial, a product of human pampering with nature.
She wants pure nature.
Right. But Polixenes argues that human artifice is part of nature, that grafting a hardier plant onto a weaker one improves it.
Which is incredibly ironic. I mean, considering Polixenes is arguing for mixing high and low breeding in flowers, but when he discovers that his royal son is trying to marry this lowly shepherd girl, he absolutely loses his mind.
Total hypocrisy.
Totally. He throws off his disguise and flies into a rage. He threatens the young lovers with death. He threatens to have Perdita's face scratched with briars. He threatens the old shepherd with torture.
He sounds just like Leontes.
Exactly. In that moment, it feels like the tragedy of the older generation is about to repeat itself. Polixenes is mirroring the exact tyrannical, unreasoning fury of his old friend Leontes 16 years prior.
It's the looming threat of the winter returning. But this is where the genre shift protects the characters. Because we are now in a comedy, the younger generation simply refuses to play by the tragic rules of their fathers.
They just reject it.
They do. When Polixenes threatens them, Prince Florizel doesn't fall into despair. He doesn't soliloquize about suicide or succumb to the king's demands. He and Perdita just defy him.
Yeah.
Florizel says, I am, but, sorry, not afeared, delayed, but nothing altered. What I was, I am. They just decide to run away together.
I love that. And the academic sources connect this moment to what's known as the benevolent huntsman motif, right?
Yes, it's a classic fairy tale and comedic trope.
Think of the huntsman who spares Snow White and tells her to flee into the woods, or the story of baby Moses put in the basket on the river.
Exactly. It's a structural necessity for comedy and romance. When the innocent are faced with a tyrant's wrath, the universe provides a way for them to seek refuge in the unknown.
They choose survival.
They choose survival, adaptability, and love over the destructive, rigid laws of the old patriarchy.
And aiding them in their escape is, without a doubt, one of Shakespeare's most fascinating creations, the rogue Autolycus.
Autolycus is incredible.
When I was reading the breakdown of Act 4, Autolycus totally stole the show for me. He is this singing, pickpocketing, con artist peddler who wanders into the sheep-shearing festival.
He's pure chaos.
He's wearing fake beards, he's selling ribbons and absurd ballads about singing fish. He's literally rolling on the ground pretending to have been beaten and robbed just so he can pick the pockets of the good-natured clown who stops to help him.
So manipulative, but so funny.
He is the walking, talking embodiment of artifice and trickery. But what's so brilliant is that his artifice is totally different from Leontes.
Oh, completely.
Leontes used his imagination to create a nightmare out of nothing. He invented a horrific reality that got people killed. Autolycus uses his imagination to create silly ballads, ridiculous costumes, and harmless illusions out of nothing.
He transforms sorrowful, heavy scenes into light entertainment.
Right.
He is the comedic foil to Leontes' tragic paranoia. In fact, the academic literature actually suggests that Autolycus is almost a stand-in for Shakespeare himself.
Wait, really? The pickpocket is Shakespeare?
Think about it. He is a protein figure. He constantly changes identities, he peddles fabricated stories to eager, gullible listeners, and he picks their pockets while they're distracted by his art.
Oh, wow.
Which is much like Shakespeare, who, as a playwright, borrowed and stole plots from other writers and historical texts to entertain the masses for a few pennies at the Globe.
That is such a cool parallel.
Autolycus represents the liberating, slightly dangerous power of pure theatricality. He liberates the play from stodgy respectability. He understands human weaknesses, vanity, greed, gullibility, and he doesn't condemn them morally like a tragic king would.
He just exploits them for a laugh.
And a bit of coin. He injects chaos, but it's a life-affirming chaos.
But, I want to push back on this a bit, thinking about the listener who might be wondering about the pacing of the play.
Sure.
Because Act 4 is famously one of the longest single scenes Shakespeare ever wrote.
It's massive.
It goes on and on. There are multiple songs. There are dances with men dressed as wild men. There's this incredibly long interaction between Autolycus and the clown over buying ribbons and ballads.
It definitely takes its time.
Right. So if our ultimate goal is to get Perdita back to Sicilia to resolve the tragedy, why spend so much time on this? Why dedicate hours to a sheep-shearing party and a singing thief when we left a king weeping over his dead family back in Sicily?
That's a fair question.
Does the audience really need a tonal shift of this massive length? Doesn't it kill the dramatic momentum?
It's a great question, and it's one that directors struggle with all the time when staging the play. But the sources provide a very clear sociological and psychological explanation for why Shakespeare drags this out.
Okay, I'm all ears.
This prolonged pastoral comedy is not just filler. It is a necessary emotional palate cleanser.
A palate cleanser.
Yeah. The Russian philosopher Mikhail Bakhtin wrote extensively about the concept of the carnival, or carnivalesque, in literature.
Oh, I've heard of that.
So carnival is a temporary period where all societal rules, hierarchies, and rigid structures are inverted or suspended. Fools become kings, peasants mock the elite, and the focus is entirely on the lower bodily stratum: eating, drinking, dancing, sexuality.
Just letting loose.
Exactly. The sources argue that Act 4 acts as this necessary carnival. It is a festival that actively purges and exorcises the melancholic, toxic demons of the tragic first half.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
The audience and the narrative itself needs to be fully immersed in this world of life, fertility, and uncorrupted, chaotic love in order to believe in the possibility of healing.
So it's almost like a form of narrative physical therapy. You have to break a sweat and get the blood pumping again before you can fix the broken bone.
Precisely. You cannot cure the trauma of Sicilia without fully experiencing the chaotic joy of Bohemia.
Right.
This massively long scene establishes the immense, uncorrupted power of the younger generation. Their pure connection to the natural cycle of spring, their resilience, and their joyful disobedience against Polixenes will eventually be the exact medicine required to heal the older generation's bitter winter.
They are gathering the energy required for the climax.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. The sheer volume of the comedy is the antidote to the sheer density of the tragedy. And they are going to need all that energy because they do go back into the cold.
They do.
The young lovers, Perdita and Florizel, aided by the rogue Autolycus and the loyal Lord Camillo, who has been serving Polixenes but longs for his homeland, flee the wrath of Bohemia.
They make a run for it.
They get on a boat and sail directly back to Sicilia to seek refuge with King Leontes. And this sets up the climax of the play, the collision.
The ultimate collision.
You have this vibrant, untamed, chaotic younger generation on a boat sailing directly into a court that has been frozen in suffocating penitent silence for 16 years. The collision is totally inevitable.
And so we arrive at Act V. We return to Leontes' court, and the atmosphere is heavy.
So heavy.
Leontes has spent the last 16 years as a true penitent. He hasn't moved on.
Yeah.
He has locked himself in a cycle of ceaseless suffering, mourning, and daily visits to the graves of his wife and son.
And guiding this penance is Paulina.
Yes,
The sources point out a fascinating character evolution here that we really have to acknowledge.
absolutely.
In the first half of the play, Paulina was often viewed through the lens of a Jacobean stock character, the scolding shrew, the loud, aggressive woman berating the tyrannical husband.
Right.
But over 16 years of shared grief, she has transformed. She's become a powerful confessor, almost a priestess figure.
She's in charge.
She totally is. She holds total moral authority over the King of Sicilia. She actively prevents his courtiers from convincing him to remarry to produce an heir.
You won't let him off the hook.
No. She makes him swear never to marry again unless she chooses the bride, which she mysteriously adds will only happen when his first queen breathes again.
She is keeping the memory of the winter alive to ensure he never forgets his sins.
Exactly. But then the doors burst open. The young lovers, Florizel and Perdita, arrive at the court, soon followed hot on their heels by a furious Polixenes and the Bohemian shepherds who know the secret of Perdita's true identity.
It's a huge convergence.
The ultimate convergence. You have a father and his lost child reuniting, old enemies facing each other, the rustic country meeting the elite court, and the themes of death and rebirth coming face to face.
But here's another fascinating choice Shakespeare makes.
Yeah.
We've waited 16 years for Leontes to find out his daughter is alive. And Shakespeare doesn't even show it to us.
Wait, really?
He doesn't give us the emotional reunion of Leontes and Perdita on stage. Instead, he has a group of gentlemen stand around and describe the reunion to the audience secondhand.
That feels almost anticlimactic. Why do that?
Because he is saving the real emotional firepower for the final scene.
Oh, I see.
The discovery of Perdita is a massive revelation, yes. But it only resolves the political problem of the heir. It doesn't heal the deepest wound of the play, the death of Hermione and the destruction of the marriage.
Right.
Shakespeare keeps his powder dry for the final movement, the famous statue scene.
Right, the statue scene.
This scene is the defining moment of the play's tragicomic vision, and perhaps one of the most transcendent moments in all of literature. Paulina invites Leontes, Perdita, Polixenes, and the rest of the court to her private chapel to view a remarkably lifelike statue of the deceased Queen Hermione, supposedly carved by a famous Italian master.
And as Paulina draws back the curtain, Leontes gazes upon the statue, and he is immediately overwhelmed by a mixture of sorrow and wonder.
It hits him so hard.
But he notices something strange. He points out that the statue looks wrinkled. It looks aged, as if Hermione had lived for the last 16 years.
Right.
Paulina tells him, no, that's just the unparalleled brilliance of the artist, capturing exactly how she would look today if she had lived. She uses artifice to explain away reality.
She's testing him.
But as Leontes stands there, weeping, wanting to kiss the statue's cold lips, Paulina offers to do something utterly impossible. She tells Leontes that she can make the statue move. She can make it breathe and step down from the pedestal.
That's a huge claim.
But she gives him a very specific, profound condition. She says, "It is required you do awake your faith."
Awake your faith. If we connect this phrase to the broader thematic arc of the play, this moment perfectly, elegantly resolves the core conflict we saw back in Act 1.
How so?
Well, think back to the Wintry Court.
Mm-hmm.
For the entire first half of the play, Leontes aggressively demanded empirical, factual proof. He demanded to know things that couldn't be known. He demanded toxic logic where there was none. And when confronted with the divine, unambiguous truth of the oracle, he rejected it because it didn't fit his paranoid worldview.
He had no faith.
Exactly. Now, in this chapel, 16 years later, Paulina demands the exact opposite of empirical proof. She demands that Leontes surrender his need for rationality, his need for absolute control, and his need for evidence.
He just has to trust.
He must embrace belief. He must awake his faith. The philosophical argument here is that joy must precede factual affirmation. You have to believe in the possibility of grace before grace can be given to you.
And when he does, when he stands there in silence and accepts the impossible, the magic happens.
It's incredible.
Music plays. Paulina calls to the statue. "'Tis time, descend, be stone no more." And the statue moves. It miraculously steps down from the pedestal. It breathes, it embraces him. Hermione is alive.
It is a stunning triumph of grace over doubt.
Truly.
But what I found incredibly poignant, and what the academic sources heavily emphasize, is Hermione's reaction.
Oh, yeah, this is so interesting.
When she comes down from that pedestal, her first words are not to Leontes.
No.
She doesn't immediately validate his suffering or comfort her husband. Her first words are a prayer to the gods to bless her daughter Perdita.
Yes.
She says, "You gods, look down, and from your sacred vials pour your graces upon my daughter's head."
The sources highlight that this specific moment signifies an unbreakable, powerful bond between women.
Absolutely.
We realize that Paulina and Hermione have essentially colluded to keep hope, and Hermione herself alive in secret for 16 years. They protected her from the toxic, destructive patriarchy of the court until the world was definitively proven safe again.
Until the oracle's prophecy was fulfilled and the lost child was found.
It is a profound display of female solidarity and quiet power in a play that began entirely with loud, violent male paranoia and oppression.
Right.
The women endure, they protect each other, and they orchestrate the final redemption. But, while this is a beautiful moment of reunion, we must be very careful not to oversimplify this ending.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have a really hard time buying this as a perfect happy ending.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, yes, the family's mostly reunited, the two kings are friends again, the young lovers are getting married. But does Shakespeare just tie it all up with a neat little bow, just like a standard comedy?
Not at all.
Reading it, it felt incredibly messy to me.
It is messy, and that is deliberate. This is where Shakespeare disrupts our generic expectations one final time. He firmly, emphatically refuses to give us a neat, flawless, fully resolved comic ending.
Yeah, the conclusion of The Winter's Tale is heavily tinged with unredeemed tragedy.
Right, because not everyone is back.
Exactly. We cannot forget that Prince Mamilius is dead. He is not coming back. He doesn't magically step off a pedestal.
And Antigonus is dead.
Eaten by a bear. His absence is a permanent, gaping scar on the joyous reunion. Furthermore, the textual analysis in our sources points out deep ambiguities and rhythmic friction in the final lines of this scene.
Friction in the text.
Yes. While Leontes has supposedly repented and learned to surrender control, his dialogue remains surprisingly authoritative.
Oh, interesting.
He starts directing everyone around the room, and his final speech contains a jarring caesura, which is a sudden dramatic pause or a harsh break in the middle of a poetic line.
So the poetry is stumbling.
Exactly. This rhythmic disorder, this stutter in the poetry, underscores that the tension between tragedy and comedy hasn't been perfectly smoothed over. The verse itself is limping.
Yes. And the most glaring example of that lingering toxicity is that incredibly awkward moment at the very end.
Oh, with Paulina.
Yeah. Paulina, who has just orchestrated this massive miracle, laments that while everyone else is happy, she's an old turtle dove who has lost her mate, referring to the dead Antigonus.
Right.
She says she will spend the rest of her life mourning him. And Leontes, the supposedly reformed, enlightened king, basically says, "Nope, I'm finding you a husband. You're marrying Camillo now."
He literally forces Paulina into a marriage with his old advisor in the final moments of the play.
It feels like a sudden, terrifying reversion to his old, controlling ways. He's back to dictating women's lives.
Right.
And Paulina's reaction to this forced marriage proposal, she is completely, conspicuously silent in the text. She doesn't say yes. She doesn't say a word.
That silence definitely makes you question the sincerity or completeness of this comic resolution. The scars are still there.
Exactly. Shakespeare deliberately frustrates our logic and our desire for a clean resolution. He even refuses to explain the core mystery of the play. Exactly where has Hermione been for 16 years?
Was she actually magically preserved as a statue and brought to life by divine intervention? Or was she just hiding in Paulina's basement the entire time, eating bread and reading books?
We are never told.
The text supports both readings simultaneously.
And that omission is intentional. Shakespeare wants us to stop demanding rational explanations. He wants us to sit in the ambiguity. He wants us to focus on the sheer, overwhelming wonder of the moment of forgiveness, while simultaneously acknowledging the permanent damage that was done.
The play demands an ambivalent vision.
It really does. The scars of the tragedy remain vividly, painfully visible, even as the comedy frantically attempts to bandage them up.
Oh, true.
So we've broken down the unities, the psychoanalytic breakdowns, the bears, the statues, the forced marriages. What does this all actually mean for you, the listener?
Why does a 400-year-old tragicomedy matter today?
Right. I think The Winter's Tale offers a profoundly accurate, deeply human takeaway. It teaches us that human life simply doesn't fit neatly into the tidy Aristotelian boxes of pure tragedy or pure comedy. We don't get to live in just one genre.
That's a great way to put it.
We all experience seasons of bitter, self-inflicted winters. We all have moments fueled by our own paranoias, our own insecurities, our desperate need for control that ends up alienating the people we love. We cause damage.
Yeah.
And just as surely, we all hope for seasons of pastoral spring. We hope for periods of chaotic joy, of grace, of forgiveness, and of new beginnings.
Yeah.
What this play tells us is that the scars of our past mistakes don't magically disappear. We carry our winters with us. Mamilius doesn't come back. But those scars, that permanent damage, doesn't have to prevent a joyous reunion either. Life is a tragicomedy. It is messy, it is deeply unfair, it is miraculous, and above all, it requires us to awake our faith in each other.
And if I may leave you with one final lingering idea to chew on as we wrap up,
Please do.
I want you to consider those 16 years of Hermione's absence. It is so easy for us, and certainly for Leontes, to view that massive gap of time solely as his punishment, his necessary penance for his tyranny and his jealousy. He had to suffer for 16 years to earn her back.
Right.
But what if those 16 years weren't just about Leontes' suffering? What if they were about Hermione undergoing a necessary incubation?
Wow.
Perhaps absolute grace and the emotional capacity to truly forgive the unforgivable, to look at the man who murdered your son and tried to murder your daughter and still offer him an embrace isn't something you can just summon overnight, no matter how good of a person you are.
No.
Perhaps true forgiveness, like the slow, agonizing turning of a bitter, frozen winter into a vibrant, blooming spring, fundamentally requires the vast, undeniable, transformative passage of time.
Forgiveness as a necessary incubation. You can't rush the spring. You have to let the winter run its course. That is an incredibly powerful lens to view our own conflicts through.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope this exploration of The Winter's Tale encourages you to embrace the complex, sometimes chaotic, scarred, and miraculous tragicomic rhythms of your own life.
Keep exploring.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep your faith awake.